collusion, no obstruction. He's a leaker.
Just 1 week after the blockbuster testimony of former FBI Director James Comey, the Attorney General set to go to the Hill on Tuesday.
The FBI Director gave this information to a third party to leak. So I think that James Comey has serious legal exposure.
Do you have illusions of grandeur? You spend a lot of time talking about your emotions.
Makes me mildly nauseous. That gave me a queasy feeling. That's why I was so uneasy. I was so stunned.
Were your feelings hurt, Jim? Man, are you dramatic.
3 Army Rangers shot and killed in Afghanistan, the same area where the military dropped the so-called mother of all bombs.
When heroes fall, Americans grieve. Our armed forces are in the fight. They're taking the fight to terrorists on our terms, on their soil.
Anti-Sharia law marches being held in some 24 cities nationwide.
Are you here to protest against Islam?
It's not against Islam. It's against Sharia law.
Before this summer, job one, we will repeal and replace Obamacare.
Obamacare is dead. The only people who won't admit that are the Democrats, who are in the way of better health care.
After that last segment, since I was getting those things right, that I was a helicopter. It's not true.
People are tweeting calling her a helicopter mom. Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, my goodness. That's right.
Anyway.
Well, welcome,
nice
Sandra. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Great to have you always. We want to bring in former Secret Service agent, former NYPD officer, and host of Renegade Republican. There he is, Dan Bongino. Dan, good to see you this morning. Good morning, Dan.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we got some news late last night on what's going to happen now with Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He's heading to Capitol Hill in response to what we heard from Comey this week, James Comey, in his testimony, basically saying, you know, he didn't feel comfortable giving him information because he thought he was going to recuse himself. Basically, I'm biased. I don't trust him. What do you make of this?
This has got to be the funniest thing I've heard all week. Jim Comey, who now we know, who testified under oath that he's the leaker, was uncomfortable giving information to Jeff Sessions. By the way, guys, who when you talk to, I don't know, I'm not a big name dropper type, but I know a few people. When you talk to people like Jeff Sessions, this guy is universally respected behind the scenes as an honorable, decent man. Make no mistake with this Jeff Sessions thing, what Jim Comey did to fuel the fire on this. You're watching the lifetime political assassination of a good and decent man. And on a very serious note, this is a disgrace. This is really shameful what's happening to this guy. He is a good man, and they are lying about Jeff Sessions. And good for him, Sessions, for going up there and fighting back this week. We'll see what he has to say.
Dan, he's fighting back, and he's putting out words. Last night he wrote a letter in response to all of this saying, quote, in light of reports regarding Mr. Comey's recent testimony before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, it is important that I have an opportunity to address these matters in the appropriate forum. So he is coming out, and he is going to defend himself. He is going to defend the Trump administration. Is this the right tactic?
You know what is absolutely the right tactic? Think about what's happening with Comey right now. Haven't you noticed with Jim Comey this pattern where he sees the world in these Manichaean terms? He always sees himself as the good guy fighting this really bad guy. First it was George W. Bush with the Ashcroft memo. Then it was Sessions. Then it was Trump. Jeff Sessions is a good guy. And another angle of this that I just want to bring up is, isn't it ironic too that Senator Blumenthal is one of the people attacking Sessions' credibility and suggesting perjury? Wasn't Blumenthal the guy who fudged the numbers on his service in combat? I mean, this is kind of unbelievably disingenuous that the leaker-in-chief Jim Comey and Senator Blumenthal, both have a history of trouble with the truth, are attacking an honorable guy like Jeff Sessions. It's pretty disgraceful.
Yeah, and he's going to fight back. He's going to get his chance in the court of public opinion on Tuesday, and will do just that. But speaking of the leaks, Michael Goodwin in the New York Post today has a great op-ed laying out how you can put all this together. Where are these leaks coming from? And maybe James Comey was king leaker. Ultimately, if you connect the dots, the author of all the pieces in the New York Times, which are anonymously sourced, and what those headlines are, they all look eerily similar. So Michael Schmidt is the writer at the New York Times who wrote all of these pro-Comey pieces in the New York Times, and these are the headlines that you can see. So Comey asked Justice Department to reject Trump's wiretapping claim. That was in March. Then in May, in a private dinner, Trump demanded loyalty. Comey demurred. And in May 16th, Comey says Trump asked him to end the Flynn investigation. You know a little bit about intelligence and information and how it traffics. I mean, does this connect some dots that, hey, maybe it's been Comey all along or his associates painting a bad picture of President Trump and the administration?
Yes, and what I think is the enormous, big, juicy scandal on this whole thing is what hasn't leaked. Jim Comey never leaked the fact, we just found out recently, that Loretta Lynch asked him to refer to the Clinton email investigation, by the way, where actual crimes were committed, the trafficking of information, as the, quote, matter, like the Federal Bureau of Matters, as someone laughingly said to him. That never leaked. We never had any leaks about the massive scandal of unmasking of Trump officials by the Obama administration, which has already admitted none of that leaked. But what leaked, Pete? The idea that President Trump hoped an investigation would go away against Mike Flynn. You know what? I hope the traffic ticket would go away, too. It doesn't mean I bribed the cop. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Dan, let me play just real quick before we move on. I want to play total devil's advocate here on this. Is this a smart strategy by the Trump administration, that is going after James Comey? We've had a number of people here on the show who've worked with him over the years, say what a stand-up guy he is. We know the history and the relationship between the Trump administration and the intelligence community. What do you think? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Do you think this is a smart strategy for them to go lock, stock, and barrel against James Comey?
Yeah, Clayton, that's a fair question. For any other president, I'd say no. Jim Comey is a trained political animal who will eat you alive. But listen, I'm not a Trumpeteer here either. I like Donald Trump. I support him. But this guy's a Queens builder. I'm from Queens. My dad was a building inspector. He worked with these guys their entire lives. If anybody's going to get in the ring and go toe-to-toe with Jim Comey, it's going to be Donald Trump, and I think he's going to win on this one.
All right, well said. All right, we have to ask you about this as well, Dan, because there's this taxpayer-funded Shakespeare in the Park. A lot of New York City dwellers know about this. Anyway, they're depicting the assassination of President Trump. We're looking at some video of what this looks like and how they act this out. They've got corporate sponsors as well as being taxpayer funded that are standing by this right now. We don't know if they're going to continue to stand by it, but some of them are Bank of America, New York Times, American Express, Delta. So we're monitoring the situation, Dan, but what do you make of all this?
Yeah. Well, let me just make 2 points. One, as a former Secret Service agent, and I'm really just pleading with the people who do this, you have no idea the damage this kind of stuff does. It can be very inspirational to people who are teetering on the edge of a serious psychological problem and serve as inspiration. Make no mistake, this is grossly irresponsible. But secondly, when you understand the left, none of this is surprising. I'm not impugning all Democrats here, but the far activist left, the far left activist groups, they see the world through critical theory as the oppressor versus the oppressed, and they've declared Donald Trump the oppressor. So they have no problem with using violence as a way to an end. They really don't care. It's an undemocratic means for them. They've lost with democracy. They're getting smoked in elections. So violence is just another tool for them. They have no problem with it at all.
And to be clear, they don't say that it's President Trump in the play. They just depict him as closely as possible to President Trump. So from the hair to the long tie to the open jacket.
Playing Julius Caesar.
Playing Julius Caesar. They play up the fact that this is who this character is.
Right. And so
but notice nobody has a problem with it on the left. Nobody seems to care. It's only us talking about it.
Well, it looks like these sponsors, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt because they, every year they put up money for this, public theater on a regular basis. They probably don't even think about it.
They don't know what the play is going to be necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
So the 6:30 this morning, Delta tweeted this. While Delta is a longtime sponsor of the highly respected public theater, we do not condone this interpretation of Julius Caesar at this summer's free Shakespeare in the Park.
But does not say that they're pulling out of being a sponsor, I take it.
Right. Well, we haven't heard that yet.
We have not
We don't know if they're still funding it or not. So there you go, Dan. At least, some of these companies are working overtime this weekend as they're starting to go on a PR.
Well, they should be. This is really irresponsible, guys. Really irresponsible to do. You should never do that.
It is. We're going to keep monitoring it for sure.
You'll inspire the wrong people.
Speaking of irresponsible on trafficking in, say, socialism, Bernie Sanders calls on his supporters, to take over what he calls the failing Democratic Party. He said it over the weekend. Take a listen.
The current model and the current strategy of the Democratic Party is an absolute failure. The Democratic Party needs fundamental change. Fundamental change. What it needs is to open up its doors to working people and young people and all people who are prepared to fight for social and economic justice. The Democratic Party must finally understand which side it is on. And that cannot be the side of Wall Street or the fossil fuel industry or the drug companies.
So, Dan, Senator Sanders calling the Democratic Party a failure, but is he the solution? Is socialism the answer?
Hey, guys, what's the Democratic Party's message? If you're a conservative, here it is. We can spend your money better than the government. You should control your own health care, and you should pick where your kid goes to school. What's the Democrats' message? Well, give us more of your money. Your health care stinks, so we'll handle it. And don't worry, public schools are just fantastic. Ignore all the failing test scores. What's the message? They keep bringing up social justice. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean to the coal miner in West Virginia who just lost his job? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything.
All right.
It usually means, well, no, I mean, honest, economic justice is code for socialism, and social justice is some sort of balkanization, identity politics. And where's that gotten them?
Yeah, but that doesn't put food on the table.
Yeah.
These people don't care about that. They need jobs, they need health care, they need good schools. The Democrat Party's a joke. They're getting smoked everywhere because they can't talk to people like normal human beings.
I'm all about flipping the script today, Dan. So now I see, as he even admits that the Democratic Party is in ashes, a total disaster. Do Republicans need to get on board and start supporting this president to actually get something done? Tax reform, health care, infrastructure. They're not going to work with Democrats, which is a party in failure, in ashes. Don't they need to get on board?
Yeah, listen, I've had some issues with this myself, talking to some Congress people. The Rhino class, not the good conservatives. You have some solid people up there. But the Rhino class is more concerned with re-election than actually moving the football down the field. And here's the critical mistake they're making. They think, the Rhino class, that if they position themselves as like a check on Trump, that they're somehow going to get elected. Yeah. The Democrats, listen, they hate you. They can't stand you. They're not going to vote for you regardless. If you don't run on a record of accomplishment with Trump, you have nothing. You have nothing to sell. The Democrats already can't stand you. They're not going to vote for you. You better get something done. They're making a huge mistake acting as some kind of check on the president. It's nonsense. It's going to fail them.
Well, That's a great point. I see Pete.
No, it's true. I mean, you've already got a check on the president. It's called the resistance movement of the Democratic Party. If Republicans don't close rank, nothing's going to happen. What do you run on?
Dan Bongino, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
Well, it's been nearly a year since the FBI called Hillary Clinton extremely careless with classified information. So how does she still have security clearance this morning? Really? Really? The unbelievable new report straight ahead.
Plus, it's a war on men. Maybe I can actually get behind one city saying stopping the man-spreading on public transportation.
Is that a real problem?
Bus campaign going viral. If you don't know what that is, we will explain.
I was just man-spreading during that whole last segment.
If the picture doesn't do it for you.
3 U.S. Army Rangers killed. Another hurt yesterday in Afghanistan in what's being considered and called an insider attack. Officials saying an Afghan soldier opened fire on U.S. troops. Our next guest was attacked in the same region, literally to the day 11 years ago. Joining me now with his reaction is retired U.S. Army Ranger and author of Outlaw Platoon, Sean Parnell. Sean, thanks for joining me this morning. They call a day like this your Alive Day. It's the day your platoon was attacked in Afghanistan. Before we get to this story about the 3 soldiers killed in Afghanistan, talk a little bit about your platoons and your service in Afghanistan.
Yeah, sure. Yesterday, June 10th, 2006, 11 years ago, was a pretty rough day for my platoon and I. I had 25 guys on the ground on an outpost in eastern Afghanistan. And on the morning of June 10th, 2006, we got attacked by over 250 insurgents. And these weren't just farmers with pitchforks. These were heavily armed and heavily trained jihadists. And they had 2 support by fire positions, 2 massive assault units, and 6 machine guns and airburst mortars and rocket-propelled grenades, and I was knocked unconscious by RPG and mortars at least 3 times in that engagement, and almost every single member of my platoon was wounded. It was a very, very rough day.
And that was part of a tour that stretched for well over a year. Having read your book, also having read your book, I know you worked a lot with your Afghan partners, training them, working with them. This attack against these 3 Rangers that were killed, 1 wounded, was ultimately is being considered an insider attack. So someone they were training or working with turned their guns on these Americans. Talk about the complication of the difficulties of working with the Afghan army.
Well, it's hugely complicated, and every commander on the ground really has to do a risk assessment to keep an extra eye on the Afghan National Army, the Afghans that we work with on the ground. Because if you got to understand, when you serve in Afghanistan, just to put it out there, just like it is, it's like the Flintstones meets the Jetsons, really. I mean, you want to go back to a time where Jesus Christ walked the earth. That's Afghanistan. Add the AK-47 in the pickup truck, and there you are. So there's not a whole heck of a lot with regards to vetting that you can do. You just have to keep an extra eye on them at the ground level. And really, working with the Afghans, 99% of the time, they're great. But it's just part of the war. It's part of the war in Afghanistan, and it's a risk you have to take.
Most Americans know nothing of the war in Afghanistan, let alone think about it or follow it in the news. Here we are, still there, this many years after 9/11. These kinds of attacks remind us of the cost and the difficulty. What's your take on the strategy going forward? Is it working? Do you have confidence that we can turn a tide in Afghanistan?
Well, I mean, absolutely we can turn a tide in Afghanistan, but the mission has to be right. I mean, for a long time now, we've been implementing a counterinsurgency strategy, and I think we need to shift radically to a counter-terrorist strategy and go after the enemy. The only path to victory in Afghanistan resides on issuing defeat after defeat to the enemy in Afghanistan. You have to destroy them and destroy their will to fight. You know, and also commit to the Afghans that we have their backs as well for the long haul. This is a really important war. We've been there for 17 years, and we owe it to every single soldier and family member that's been touched by this war to win. We have a moral obligation to win. Otherwise, we're going to have a whole generation of Americans wondering what the heck their sacrifice is for. So the stakes are very high.
It's a great point. You've got a moral obligation to win. Otherwise, we're there longer, and we lose more brave men like these three Rangers. Sean, thank you very much for your service. We certainly remember your platoon on this day, and thanks for your expertise this morning. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You got it. All right, coming up, this sheriff went viral with his Wheel of Fugitives. Now he's back with a new message that has people talking again. Stick around for it.
Guns, knives, trucks,
Welcome back. It's time for your news by the numbers. It's the club edition. First up, 45. That's the number of counties that could soon be without Obamacare. In the past week, this number has doubled. Reports say there are currently 35,000 enrollees that may have no carriers to choose from next year. It would mark the first time since the marketplace was opened in 2014. Next up, 37. That's the number of bills President Trump has signed into law since the start of his presidency, placing him ahead of the last four administrations. The Republican House also breaking records, passing 158 bills so far. And 60. That's how many passenger planes Boeing will be sending to Iran. The American company finalizing a deal with Iran's Ashuman Airlines. This is the second deal between Boeing and an Iranian airliner since the Iran nuclear deal went into effect. Okay, wonderful.
All right, well, a high school student running for class president is disqualified from the school race after he wins for channeling President Donald Trump in his stump speech. Take a listen.
I am all for freedom, equality, and liberty. Wants to advance communist ideals into our very fabric. Will expand the government so you will not be able to do anything. She will likely create a dress code for you all. She will raise taxes to 80%. What I propose is that we build a wall between here and Sebastian River, and we make Sebastian River pay for it. Thank you all, and I hope I win your vote tomorrow.
That student, J.P. Krause, joins us now. J.P., good to have you here this morning on Skype. It sounded like in that stump speech that was your opponent, that you were saying, this is what this person will do, right?
That's correct.
How did that go over in the class?
In the class? Oh, everyone in the class thought it was funny. There was no real...
And of course, JP, you wanted to raise taxes. Last time I checked, student body president can't raise. Your opponent wants to raise taxes, and your opponent, you want to build a wall between you and a rival high school. So obviously, you were having fun with this speech about your opponent. This was in an AP, I think, politics course or something. Your teacher asked you to AP history, asked you to step up and talk. Were you ad-libbing that, just making it up, or were you ready for that?
Oh, completely off the cuff.
Completely off the cuff. And so you did that. You left. You win the election, you become the student body president, and then a couple of days later, what happened?
Well, I had just gotten out of a national academic games competition. I was out of school for a couple of days for that, and as soon as I get out, I receive a phone call from the front office basically telling me I am disqualified from the presidential election for harassing the other candidate, and I have a detention on Thursday.
Detention. But then the principal had a phone call with your with your mother. By the way, the school principal's reaction to this was, quote, speeches must focus on realistic and pertinent issues. The insulting language used in his speech was of a nature that created a situation of public humiliation and therefore violated school district rules pertaining to harassment, was the word that the principal used. But he also had a phone conversation with your mother and said that you had caused a mess. How did you respond to that?
I thought it was completely outrageous. I never thought that this speech could ever evolve in what it's become, really. It was completely a joke from the beginning and completely satirical.
And I'm curious where the harassment part comes in, because you said my opponent wants to raise taxes, my opponent wants to...
Dress code.
Dress code. What was harassing about that?
The school told me that accusing her of advancing communist ideals in our student government was considered harassment.
Wait, so was there any part of that speech that was true? Or were you just saying, hey, I'm going to have a little fun with this, it's a class president, you know, and you probably didn't even think it was being taped?
Around. Oh, no, I could see the camera, but I didn't expect it to be.
So, JP, you have involved an attorney in all of this to respond to the school. What was that response?
Well, Mark Miller and Pacific Legal Foundation reached out to me after seeing an editorial in the paper in our local post, TC Palm, by Larry Reisman. And Mark Miller reached out to me and offered to represent us for free. And he sent a letter to the student government asking, or school board asking to reinstate me as class president.
JP, do you think any of this has to do with the fact that you sounded like President Trump?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you, but it's there.
You think so? Yeah. Well, hey, our viewers can read through the tea leaves there too, but it sounds like the Pacific Legal Foundation will be fighting on your behalf. Maybe let us know if you become class president again.
Yeah, and stop harassing people.
All right, thanks for coming on this morning,
Thanks, JP. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Coming up here on the show, call it revenge of the losers. President Trump has faced an unprecedented amount of attacks, not only from Hillary Clinton, but also from President Barack Obama. So would these attacks be accepted if the president was anyone else? Our panel is here to debate that next.
Plus, lend us your ears. It's National Corn on the Cob Day. Chef Jay Jackson is grilling up some delicious recipes on the plaza. Rick was going to be out there alone, but I'm going to bum rush the segment.
Now, it is a vegetable. Is it a vegetable?
I don't know.
James Comey revealing he orchestrated new leaks of his memos detailing each conversation with President Trump. So as the leaks pile up, how can the president and his team move past all of this? Let's bring in our panel. Tammy Bruce is a Fox News contributor and a radio talk show host. Michael Starr Hopkins is a Democratic strategist, and Aaron Elmore is a former Apprentice contestant and Trump supporter. Thanks for all of you for being here this early in the morning. Good to see you. All right, Tammy, I'll start with you first. So much happening. It is going to be a huge week on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
Obviously hearing from Jeff Sessions. How can the president and his team move past this?
Well, they're already moving past it with the work they're doing. They're not being distracted. The media likes to tell you that they're bogged down, but they're getting a lot done, as is Congress. But the issue here really is internally. We've seen, as an example, the arrest of Reality Winner. This is the dynamic that needs to happen. There needs to be prosecutions. We heard when the president went on his tour, European tour, that they knew who was effectively leaking in the White House, but this has to be a priority. It has to be treated as though if we had a foreign agent in agencies and in the White House, because I'd say this regardless of who's in the White House. This is about national security. It's about being able to run the government, and they have to approach it accordingly, not only in the White House, but in the agencies. And this means perhaps lie detector tests for holdovers who are there from Obama. It also means firing those people who fail. And then it also means, of course, prosecuting individuals aggressively, making this new war room they have something they use in that framework to make sure the American people know that this has been dangerous for the country and they're taking it seriously.
And as we had Ned Ryan on yesterday, Aaron, saying the best offense is a good defense. What should they do here to make progress?
I think, first of all, everyone is, like Tammy said, getting over this. We heard everything that we needed to hear from Jim Comey. President Trump is not under investigation. President Trump did not try to impede an investigation.
Funny how that's missing from a lot of the headlines.
You know what it was? It's like a giant, plentiful cookie jar that you're going to reach your hand into and you think you're going to guess what came out of Comey? a big fat nothing cookie.
But still, Michael, I mean, Democrats plan to keep getting in the way here.
I mean, Democrats plan to pursue this. The president has fired Preet Bharara. He fired the former AG. He fired, members who have tried to investigate this Russian collusion, this obstruction of justice. At every attempt, the president has obstructed the investigation. And I think that's something that Democrats and Republicans should both want to investigate and find out why.
And the big question is, will the president be able to get his agenda done? Everybody talking about Obamacare and moving forward and with repealing and replacing that. Talking about tax reform, whether that's going to get done by end of year, Tammy. Yeah. There's a lot on the president's agenda, but still, as the headlines do point out, he's getting his administration has been bogged down by this.
Well, look, those are headlines. That's not reality.
Right.
And so this is what the president has to do, is what Ronald Reagan did, which is go past the press. Now, they've been doing a lot more of that, if you notice, in recent weeks. He's been really going to the Rose Garden. He's been having speeches, new rallies. This has to be a normal part of what they end up doing here. Because, again, the headlines are not reality. And the reality, though, is, too, they've set this agenda. We know they understand the dynamic with Obamacare, with the taxes, and they are operating accordingly. But what matters, though, and already 6 out of 10 Americans from a Quinnipiac poll a couple weeks ago say that Americans, 6 out of 10 are angry at the media because they recognize that they're being lied to. And this is also having an impact on the Democrats. You had the speech from Bernie Sanders earlier saying the Democrats have failed. But as they're killing Trump in Central Park on a play, the Trump team is working to get this nation on her feet. Right. That's the message, though. The media's not going to carry it. They've got to carry it themselves at the White House.
And it's unbelievable what he is up against, Michael, when you consider this headline, The Revenge of the Losers. The most unprecedented thing about Trump's presidency is actually Obama and Clinton's open opposition to his policies. They are not being quiet like many past presidents as they handed off the baton to allow him to do his job.
I mean, President Obama, I think, has been very respectful and been very quiet in the early stages of the Trump administration. I think, to go to your earlier point, though, Donald Trump isn't Ronald Reagan, and I think that's the problem that Republicans are seeing right now, because at every step he seems to get into his own way. He seems to mess up his own message, and so there's this quagmire where Republicans can't push forward health care, tax breaks, things like that they want to push through in their agenda, because Donald Trump can't stop tweeting. He can't stop talking about things.
Come on, Michael. Come on, Aaron, get in there.
Speaking of agenda, where have the Democrats gone with their agenda? They have no message. They have no platform. President Trump's son, Eric, was on earlier this week saying, since they have no message, all they are becoming is obstructionists. So let's use a basketball analogy. We're in the middle of the playoffs right here. The Democrats, your bench is lean. You need someone so you can make the playoffs. What's going to happen in 2020 to them? So you know what? Good. I say let's keep doing what we're doing, and we'll just have another 4 years.
All right. You guys brought the energy for it being 7:30 in the morning on the East Coast. All right. Thanks to all of you, Tammy, Michael, and Aaron. Good to see you. All right. Clayton's got headlines. Clayton?
Thanks, Sandra. Turning now to your headlines. Protesters marching against Sharia law and radical Islam across the United States this weekend. Violent clashes erupting after counter-protests popped up in some of those cities. Objects and punches thrown in Seattle, where about 100 Antifa protesters met dozens of anti-Sharia law protesters, making several assault arrests. And we had Pete speak to some of those protesting radical Islam. We will play that for you next hour. And believe it or not, Hillary Clinton and her top aides still have security clearance. Is that normal? That's because the Department of State is not done investigating the former Secretary of State's email scandal. When Clinton resigned in 2013, she negotiated continuing access to classified documents for herself and 6 staffers under the designation research assistants. It's now been nearly a year since the FBI concluded that she was reckless with top-secret information. Well, this is war. A Florida sheriff sending his message loud and clear on social media, urging people to arm themselves in case of an unseen attack.
In my book, what's next is to fully understand that this is war, and you better be prepared to wage war to protect you, your family, and those around you if attacked.
Sheriff Wayne Ivy's message comes days after a deadly workplace shooting in nearby Orlando, claiming the lives of 5 people. The Brevard County Sheriff's message getting mixed reactions, with some praising his tactics. Others, though, say it encourages hateful acts. Sheriff Wayne Ivy will be joining us live on Fox and Friends tomorrow. And a new campaign is out to ban man-spreading. Officials in Spain are asking people to stop sitting with their legs apart, giving little regard for personal space of other people on public transportation in Madrid. These new signs will soon go up in city buses. Madrid isn't the first city to start cracking down. New York City launched a campaign in its subway system to end man-spreading back in 2014.
Quit man-spreading your taking
I don't even know
the whole couch.
I don't even know what people are even talking about.
I mean,
what are people even talking about?
I don't know.
I don't even know what
is
this is.
Sometimes it's comfortable.
I mean, on a city bus, you have your space, and
So I have to sit like this now?
Space, okay, just like the couch.
So is it used as a tactic to block others away?
So I have to sit like this now?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. See how much space I take
Could
out?
you bring me a scone, please?
Oh, yes. Okay. It was Spain, not England. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm supposed to read? Okay, good. I'm
Stop man-spreading.
All right. I'm man-closing.
Lord, we've lost
All right, coming up, he may be known for battling billionaires, but now Bernie Sanders is turning his anger toward Christians. Our own Father John has a message for the senator just ahead.
Plus, another Democrat is cursing up a storm.
Has he kept any of these promises? No. No.
Yep, the media's response to that. Don't worry, she does it all the time. Really? We'll talk about that at the top of the hour. Well, he may be known for battling billionaires, but now Bernie Sanders turning his anger towards Christians?
Are you suggesting that all of those people stand condemned? What about Jews? They stand condemned too?
Senator, I'm a Christian.
I understand you are a Christian, but this country is made up of people who are not just. I understand that Christianity is the majority religion, but there are other people who have different religions in this country and around the world. In your judgment, do you think that people who are not Christians are going to be condemned?
The Vermont senator directing his latest rant at President Trump's pick for deputy director of the Office of Management and Budget over his writings concerning Islam.
Joining us now to react, Fox News religion contributor Father Jonathan Morris. Father, good to see you this morning. So what's going on here?
Well, that would have been a great discussion if it was a theological debate, I don't know, between the Vatican and Judaism and Islam and evangelical Christianity.
Right.
But I think his job that this gentleman is up for has to do with fiscal matters and budget. And, you know, it wasn't too long ago that Jews and Catholics and others wouldn't even be considered for a post. I think Senator Sanders has to be aware that as soon as you apply a litmus test, right, and that's what was being done right here, on theology, on religion, well, then we're standing in glass houses because Bernie Sanders would not have been able to get a job, would not have been elected, just say 50 years ago, precisely because of his religion. And that is problematic.
But Father John, if I could ask you, what was your raw reaction? I mean, I know you're digging into it for us, but how did that go over with you when you initially saw that?
You know, I didn't like the attitude there that Bernie Sanders was expressing. You know, it's understandable. Maybe he's saying, hey, your theology condemns me, and that's understandable, but that has nothing to do with the job that this man is up for.
And to your point, well, we should be clear about what he was up for and why this was an issue for him. He brought it up because he had written an article a while ago,
yes,
and, you know, it seemed to Bernie Sanders that he was anti-Islam, that he was, and he, as he described it, Islamophobic,
yep,
and that he thought that that person had no place in the federal government. I mean, that's the litmus test, I guess.
As soon as the litmus test is, does your religion agree with my religion, if it doesn't agree with me, then you can't have a job in our government. That's where we go wrong, and that's why it had no place in this session.
And Father, there are pretty definitive things said in both the Bible and the Quran about, you know, what you believe, and based on that, where you're going and where other people are going. And there are beliefs that people have in private that they're not going to apply to someone in an office, certainly in an Office of Management and Budget.
Right.
So why does he go there?
I think it's a choice that that America is better when all of us just decide that we don't believe in anything too deeply about religion, and we just all say, hey, listen, I believe that you are perfect just as you are, no matter what you do. That's not what our religion teaches us. Okay, that's not what the Christian faith is. It's not what the Jewish faith is, or the Muslim faith is. It's okay to have very strong opinions about theology, about God, about salvation, about heaven, about hell. and still get along in a civil society and actually allow somebody to do a great job in budget and management, even though we disagree with them.
That's a great point. It is. It is. It's a desire to dilute it all down.
Yes,
as opposed to recognizing-
everybody has to be exactly the same.
Right.
And that is real democracy. It's not.
Good of you to share your
Socialism for
Sunday
faith.
morning for us.
Thank
with
you, Father.
us.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
It's
Great digs here.
You like it?
Oh, yeah.
Very, very nice.
Do you drink from a garden hose?
Very nice.
Oh,
Let's
Do you drink from garden hose?
You know what?
Unbelievable.
Can you bless?
I would suggest that mothers allow their children to use garden hose to eat, and I think that you are depriving them of their childhood, honestly.
Wow,
More
from
on
the
that in a
Father.
bit.
That's right.
Thank you,
Can
Father.
you bless this studio?
It needs blessings.
Coming up, President Trump fighting back on the Russian collusion accusations with Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Next up to testify, Chris Wallace will be here to discuss that. Coming up next.
Looking forward to that. And it's Pete's favorite part of the morning.
Yep,
It
I'm
is
outta here.
National Corn on the Cob Day, people. Chef Jay Jackson grilling up some delicious recipes on the plaza. Pete,
Let's
slow
get out there.
down.
Let's get out.